2012. PS3 is nearing the end of its life cycle. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 releases and is carving out its place in gaming history. CSGO releases, becoming the new gold standard for competitive PC FPS games. Dishonored, Borderlands 2, Far Cry 3, Mass Effect 3, Journey, and while all of that is brewing, to christen in the new year on January 10th, 2013, this trailer drops. The reason why I've taken you all on this little trip down memory lane is because there are so many things going on with this game outside of the actual game itself. And I felt that in this review it would be a little disingenuous to not at least mention some of these things. The first of those things being hype. No game, no matter how great, would have ever been able to deliver to this level of hype. Now, one would hope that after the infamous No Man's Sky release, people would have learned their lesson when it comes to overhyping a game before its release. But it's also important to remember that the hype for Cyberpunk began 3 years before No Man's Sky even came out. 7 years people have been waiting for this game, and every time it seemed like we were getting close to getting our hands on it, it got delayed. 3 times to be exact. But here's the thing. Remember that 2013 teaser trailer I showed you guys earlier? Here's how that trailer ends. So, after 7 years of development, 3 delays, and the tagline "coming when it's ready," on December 10th, 2020, the game finally releases. And it's still not done. This game released in such an unfinished and buggy state that Sony was not only offering refunds, but also completely removed the game from the PlayStation Store. This is especially bad when you remember that the majority of people that have been waiting for this game are on PS4 and Xbox One consoles, which weren't even out when the original teaser trailer dropped for this game. Now I realize that up until this point, this entire video has been overall just negative and me just kind of shitting on the game, but in reality I actually really enjoyed this game and really liked it. So let's actually finally get around to the review part of this and talk about the game itself. There's a lot to cover in this game, so
get your popcorn ready.
But where I want to start is the visuals. Despite all of the negative things surrounding this game, if there's one thing that everyone agrees on, it's that this game, when it's working properly and is on the right hardware, it is absolutely breathtaking. These are the specs of my computer. Now, no way is this the top of the line or the latest and greatest GPU and graphics card, but it's also no slouch. With my PC, I was able to run on the high preset with ray tracing turned off. But even with ray tracing off, I don't know what kind of lighting system CD Projekt Red has built into this game, but just look at this, man. And that brings me to the map itself. Now, while the map is bigger than just Night City, it's pretty obvious and evident that Night City really is the focal point, and it is where a lot of the story and the game as a whole just takes place inside of Night City. And this environment that CD Projekt Red have crafted for this game is probably, in my opinion, the most fully realized and most alive feeling just city and map and setting that has ever been put into a video game. The streets are dense and bustling with people. The cars have amazing amounts of detail, from the shiny exterior and the fully realized interiors. The weapons are unique and have flashy animations. Cyberpunk packs so much detail into the world, and it's all there for the player to see in first person. Like I mentioned, Cyberpunk is completely in the first person with the exception of driving, where you have the option to toggle between third and first, and driving is your main means of transportation around Night City, but unfortunately, it isn't that good. While all the vehicles do have unique driving characteristics, as a whole, every car in the game just feels super light and floaty, and their turning circles are way too small. And if you're driving even remotely fast in the game, the minimap is zoomed in way too far, so every time you end up flying past your turn, so you're forced to either back up or turn around just to get back on track. When you do finally make it to your destination, however, it's time for some first-person combat. You have a surprising amount of freedom in choosing how you want to approach combat. There's a slew of guns and melee weapons to choose from. Stealth is an option. There's also a mechanic in the game called quick hacking that allows you to hack the environment or hack enemies directly to do a number of things, like distract enemies or literally just turn off their eyeballs since everything is cybernetic. While all that sounds good, in practice, it's not that great. While stealth and quick hacking are options to players in most scenarios, just going in guns blazing is not only the most fun way to go about it, but it's also the most effective. However, the issue with that is that the gunplay and melee combat is not that great either. It's just overall really clunky and floaty, and it almost feels old, like it was made for a game that's just not very modern. The AI in this game is also incredibly inconsistent. Sometimes enemies will spot you through walls or completely across buildings and blast you around corners from seemingly impossible angles, and other times you'll be breaking their buddy's neck right in front of them and they won't even notice you.
You better pray I don't find you.
Through most of the game, I'll just mindlessly walk through gunfights, one-shotting everyone with no fear, but then when I actually die, it just ends up like this. Overall, the combat serves its purpose, but it's just not that good, and I honestly think it's hard carried by the number of options that the players have to upgrade and personalize your character. Aside from the selection of guns, there's also a lot of upgrade trees and paths that you have for your character. You can upgrade to do more damage with specific weapons, or go all into quick hacking and stealth. Crafting is also another upgrade path. There are a lot of options here for players to mess around with. In my playthrough, I went all into upgrading my pistol damage and my blunt weapon damage. Blunt weapons being things like hammers, bats, and your fists, as opposed to the blade weapons, which are katanas and knives and things like that. Unfortunately, a lot of these upgrades just come down to simple stat or percentage boosts, and don't really change the way that you're going to approach combat. They just kind of make you more powerful and efficient when you're actually in combat. Aside from those skill trees, there's cyberware, which is a system where you can augment different parts of your body. Some of these cyberware are actually really cool and do things that do shake up the game, like the arm augments, where you can weaponize yourself with mantis blades or wrist-mounted grenade launcher, or what I chose is the gorilla arms. And then there's the leg augments, which allow you to access things like a double jump or one big supercharged leap. Aside from the arms and legs, however, the rest of the augments are simple stat boosts similar to what you'd see in the skill trees, which is pretty disappointing. I mentioned earlier that there's a crafting system in the game, but if you forgot about me saying that, it's okay, because I completely forgot that it was even in the game for pretty much my entire playthrough. Not once did I ever use this crafting system, because it's just not worth it from what I've seen. Not only would you have to spend your upgrade points in order to be able to craft better materials and better rarities of weapons, the game is constantly giving you guns, whether it be from enemies you're killing, or if you're just buying them from the various vendors around the map. It is genuinely pointless, and CD Projekt Red could probably completely remove this system from the game, and I wholeheartedly believe that the majority of players just wouldn't notice or wouldn't care either way. In a first-person open-world game where you make the decisions and choose specific dialogue options and a specific background, all in the pursuit of immersing the player in the world and story, personalization is important. Unfortunately, this is another front where Cyberpunk falls short. The character creator at the start of the game is, in my opinion, actually pretty good. I can see people being disappointed that you can't take full control of the character model and create some abomination of a character, but in a game that's all about keeping you immersed and invested in the story, I can see why CD Projekt Red decided not to implement that type of system. Outside of the character creator, there's a lot of different clothing items in the game that you get either through looting or buying them from vendors. Each of these clothing items have an armor stat, and some of the higher rarity ones give additional stat boosts. Now that may sound normal, but what this leads to is that you have to decide to either dress your character how you want them to look, or just put on whatever is the best and have pretty much no control over what you look like. Plenty of games have solved this problem by either having separate slots for clothing items, one that's purely cosmetic and the other that actually matters for stats, or having some sort of system where you can take the stats from one item and combine it with one that you like the way it looks and just combine it into one cohesive item. But for one reason or another, Cyberpunk doesn't have that. And in a game where there's so much cool clothing designs that are very futuristic, it is a pretty big oversight. Another oversight, which may be even worse honestly, is that you can't personalize your guns and cars at all. Gun customization is limited to a sight and some augments, but in terms of cosmetics and as far as the guns go, it's pretty much just the sight. And the cars literally get zero customization options at all. If you buy a car or a motorcycle or a truck in the game, you get it the way it comes, and that's it. This is made all worse when there are customized versions of these cars and different versions of these weapons in the game around you. So it seems like this is a feature that was meant to be implemented and it just isn't yet. Maybe it'll be added in the future, or I got left on the cutting room floor, who knows. There's even an entire side story that revolves around street racing where you're surrounded by other modified cars. But hey, that's just for show I guess, because you definitely can't modify yours. So far I've talked about this game in a pretty negative light, but once again, overall I did enjoy this game, and that enjoyment rides completely on the story, not only the narrative that the characters have to tell, but the story that this world, that Night City, has to tell. Since I don't want this review to have any spoilers in it, I can't go super into detail about the story, but I can genuinely say I enjoyed the entire narrative from start to finish. Cyberpunk is hard carried by the narrative and by the voice actors and by the world that this story takes place in. Jackie, Victor, Judy, Panam, Goro, and of course Johnny Silverhand harbor so much life and are fully fleshed out characters, and that's not even close to all the characters in this game. Originally I thought that Keanu Reeves was going to be a minor character you'd see for like an hour or so, but no, he's a main character throughout the entire game, and it makes the Johnny Silverhand character and the game as a whole just that much more enjoyable. These characters, along with the amazingly crafted world, create the most alive feeling game I've ever experienced. CD Projekt Red have created a world that feels as if it will continue on with or without you. Now I've seen people complaining that the main campaign is too short, but that's simply just not true, because while you can just speed run the main story missions, that is not the proper way to experience this game. There are so many character stories to experience outside of the main story missions, and that is where the bulk of this game and its incredible narrative lies. Again, I can't talk about the story too much because it'll get into spoilers, so to wrap things up, Cyberpunk 2077 is not the revolutionary new standard for video games. Combat is wonky, the driving is floaty, the progression system is uninteresting, and don't forget the ungodly amount of bugs. However, somehow through all of this, I still love this game, and it's solely because of the experience of Night City. The game is stunning and the environment is crafted with so much detail, and most importantly, the characters have so much personality and soul that despite the bugs and issues, I was still invested and immersed in this game as a whole. So looking at this game through the Moses Monocle, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Now, in reality, I like this game a lot more than a 6 out of 10, but because of the fact of just how unfinished and broken the game is, I just can't justify giving it a higher rating than that. Remember, this game isn't even playable or purchasable on PS4. Sony has, to my knowledge, still had it removed and has not put it back up from the PlayStation Store. But despite that, the experience that Night City has to offer in its story and visuals is undeniably great. If you want my advice, just wait on it. One can only hope that CD Projekt Red will commit to fixing this game and making it the game that it should have been when it released. So if you could just wait some months, like 6 months or something, however long it'll take them, or just wait until you see the game on sale or something at a discount, then just don't buy it now. Just give it some time, because I truly hope that in the future more people can experience and will be able to experience all the great things that Cyberpunk 2077 has to offer in the proper way. Alright, it's another episode of the Moses Monocle, finally done and out. I put a ton of work in this video. It took me so long to get out, and I know I'm late to the whole Cyberpunk review thing, but I put over 100 hours into just playing the game and then having to edit it and everything, and then college started back up, so I had even less time. It was a whole shebang. I'm so happy it's finally done. So if you made it here to the end of the video, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Not only let me know what you think of Cyberpunk itself, because I know that the game is very polarizing and a bit controversial on, you know, whether you should like it or not, but of course that's all just opinion. And then obviously let me know what you thought of the actual video, editing wise, or anything, any critiques, good or bad. I appreciate them. Like and subscribe, all that. And yeah, see you guys on the next one.